All right. So this has been a real talker in the state ever since really it was, I believe, Governor DeSantis who was the first person to kind of float this idea. We're talking about property taxes. And if you live in the state of Florida, even if you don't own a home, you are going to likely be impacted in one way or another, depending on what the legislature decides to do. So Florida's legislative session is underway right now. There are several proposals being floated around right now, more than a dozen, that would change property taxes. They include eliminating all non-school property taxes, phasing them out, exempting them for people who are 65 years or old, increasing homestead exemptions, all of the above. But even if you are a renter, this could impact you because potentially it could, if your landlord sees fit, maybe reduces your rent. Or if you live in any municipality, which we all do, we are hearing from local elected officials who say changing their revenue source would have dramatic impacts on how local counties and cities are run. And so we are getting a lot of people who are weighing in on this online. We have some comments from some of those people. Someone said nothing will stop the actual land and property owners from still charging the same amount to renters. That's one point. I mean, maybe they will. Clayton asked the question that many have, where's the funding for government services like police, fire, and schools going to come from? A lot of the proposals have been saying that school taxes, which are separate, would not be impacted by this.
They're trying to, these proposals make it so you can't, non-school taxes for homestead
And there are also proposals saying that local cities and counties cannot cut fire and police, but none of this is set in stone. Douglas is skeptical about where this could go and the impacts if local governments need to ask Tallahassee for everything. And that is also, one of the arguments that's being put out there, especially by local municipalities. It's kind of local control, local government. We have the right to set our own taxes. That's why people elect us to, run their services for them and run their cities.
Yeah, I find this interesting because I do feel like if one of these is able to make it on the ballot, if they can agree on it and the governor signs onto it.
So this would have to go to the state constitution.
So obviously, yes, these are not bills that are just going to go into law. These are just to get the amendments on your ballot for November. Now, I feel like if one of them makes it on the ballot, it's got a really good chance of getting 60%.
This also goes back to what was one of our top stories tonight is the whole Doge thing. Because when these people like Blaise Ingoglia, the state chief financial officer, would come to places like Orange County and say there's all this waste, part of his argument was that while population has increased this much, property tax revenue has gone up at a much larger rate. And so the state, in many cases, was making the argument that clearly there's waste then. Because
we can cut property taxes to do this. That was the whole point in the Doge.
Yes.
Yeah. They were pretty transparent about that. We're doing Doge to basically say that local governments don't need as much money as they're taking.
They're continuing to collect more and more and more as property values have gone up, but we're not adding to our population.
I'll be interested to see if they can agree. A few years ago, everybody kind of coalesced around the governor. There's a much more contentious relationship between the Florida House and the Senate. I've never, in my lifetime until the last few years, and the governor, they have never gotten along. And he's a lame duck
governor now. So, he's not going to be the governor once his term is up. He can't run again.
And you sort of have factions now because there's the DeSantis camp and then you have the people that Trump backs, and so there's two sort of competing elements. It is control. The Republicans control the state, absolutely. But the question is, can they all agree on one plan?
And if you are a property owner, chances are you want some property tax relief. But what will the cost of that in terms of services and the impacts on your community?
Yeah, it's true. A lot of questions yet to be answered. Legislative session, about a month left. Clock is ticking,
lawmakers. We'll see what they can do.